Hey, what's up guys? Austin back again with another long play video. This time it's Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Genesis. Personal favorite of mine for the system. It's, well, for you guys that have been subscribed to my channel for a while, you know the Castlevania series in general is a personal favorite of mine, and Bloodlines is up there with being one of my favorites in the whole series, probably within my top 3. Maybe top 4, because there's so many Castlevania games that are just awesome. And Castlevania Bloodlines is definitely in that category. It's a very, very good old school linear style Castlevania game, but it does have a few things on the 8-bit Nintendo games, and to an extent even some of the other versions like Dracula X and Castlevania 4. Well, not so much Castlevania 4 in my opinion, but it has some nice features that some other versions do not have. But this was the only Castlevania game that the Sega Genesis got, and I believe it came out in 93-ish, something like that. It came out in both, oh look, 94, ha! It came out in Japan, the UK, and America as well. And in America it's called Bloodlines. In Europe I believe it's called Castlevania, the New Generation, and they took out a lot of the blood and things like that. And in Japan it's just called Vampire Killer, I believe, which is what the original Castlevania series was called out there. It's called Vampire Killer. Over there in Japan, I think they actually call it Castlevania now. They don't actually call it Vampire Killer. So, but before I kind of ramble on in an opposite tangent like I normally do, this game is kind of cool because you can select 2 different characters. Now, the first character I selected that we're going to go through the game with is Jonathan Morris. He's some kind of Belmont descendant or something like that, and he's got the traditional Vampire Killer whip. And he plays like, well, a Castlevania game should, or at least a Castlevania game with a whip-bearing character. And the next character you can play as, though, I believe is Eric Lecarde or something like that, and he actually uses a spear, and his attacks are a little bit different. His range is almost the same. I think it's longer in some instances and shorter in others, or something like that. Well, let's just say both characters have their own little quirks and traits. For instance, Jonathan, he can actually whip diagonally up and forward while in air, whereas Eric can't. He can only shoot diagonally or attack diagonally while stuck on the ground. And Jonathan, when he's up in the air, he can also whip straight down. Likewise with Eric, he can do that as well. But each character has their own sort of distinct play style. They're very similar in most cases, but and they both have their quirks. So depending on your style, you might want to play as John Morris with the whip, or you might want to play as Eric with the spear. And this playthrough right here, actually, I beat the game twice. First, I beat it on normal mode with Jonathan Morris, and then I go through the game a second time on hard mode, or actually it's called expert mode in this game, and I beat it with Eric as well. Now, my run with Jonathan right here, I believe I actually do the game dying only once. I believe I die once, and it's in a really stupid situation. I was going for a hidden extra life. I was trying to show you guys how to access it, and I end up dying trying to get back from gathering that extra life. And ironically, this is actually my second playthrough in this game. I did a playthrough in this game where I had died like 6 times on normal mode, and instead of doing a commentary on that video, I decided that I could do it again, and I know I could do better at the game, and that's what this playthrough is. And that point where I get that hidden extra life, which I believe it's on stage 4, I also died on my first playthrough, so I was really confident though that I could get that extra life on this playthrough right here, but it was a really cheap death in my opinion, and I'll talk more about that when I get close to it and when it actually happens, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. But other than that, I don't think I die in this game. I think that's the only time I die in this one playthrough. Now, my second playthrough with Eric on expert mode isn't quite as good because, well, it is on expert mode. It is naturally a little bit more difficult. So I believe I died 2 or 3 times with Eric, but I still managed to beat the game without continuing. So hopefully both playthroughs are entertaining for you. Both characters do have different paths they can take. For instance, there are some areas where Eric actually has this sort of upwards jumping ability where he can, like those platforms right there, he could probably jump up to them with his special jump. So there are areas in the game where only Eric can get to, and there are areas of the game where Jonathan can only get to. For instance, right here, you can see me whipping the ceiling. You can latch onto them. That's one thing that Jonathan has as the whip character, and Eric, the spear character, does not have. So there are a couple points in the game where each character has their own different paths they have to take, and so if you decide to watch all the way through the second playthrough, you can see the extra areas that Eric has to take as well. Now, while I'm at this part, there's actually an extra life on this candle, so be prepared to hit it. And if you want to have a really easy time getting through this game, well, not so much an easy time, but if you want to have a better chance of getting through this game without continuing, make sure you figure out where all the extra lives are. There's a lot of them thrown throughout the game, and for instance, that one right there on that bone bridge on the very first level. And I'll point out those extra lives as I get through to them as well. And here I'm also just kind of messing around, whipping the ceiling up there, trying to latch onto it as many times as I can. It's one of the things I really like about this game, is that you can do things like that. I like games that let you kind of mess around like that, and it gives you a better sense of freedom than some of the other Castlevania games, and that's one of the things this version of Castlevania really has going for it, and I really like that aspect of this game. For instance, right here, I swing and I destroy the boss. That's not mandatory, it's not necessary, but it's just something I like doing. I like it when games give you variety like that. It's really cool. So, much like other Castlevania games or earlier Castlevania games, it's a score-oriented game. It's not very fun playing this game for a high score, because if you play very well, your points don't really fluctuate all that much if you just run through the game as fast as you can. But if you're concerned about extra lives and things like that, points do have a purpose in this game. You do get extra lives from racking up a certain amount of points. I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but you can get extra lives that way as well. And so playing well means that you'll most likely get more extra lives than you would if you didn't play so well and didn't try to conserve your items to get a greater amount of points at the end of the stage. There are actually some points in the game, no pun intended. There's some areas in the game that where you can actually point rack a little bit. There's areas with red skeletons, and I'll actually show you what I mean with that in a little bit. It's on level 5, I believe. So, but I'll talk more about that once we get closer to it. But yeah, this is stage 2. This is the game has a few sections where, in traditional Castlevania style, the screen actually kind of forces its way up the screen, and it's not too difficult. Just take your time. I recommend. Oh yeah, there's another extra life up here, right there. I recommend that you don't bolt your way up as quickly as possible. You want the screen to come down just a little bit, because sometimes enemies are actually up on the next platforms, and I don't recall which platforms exactly, but I have a good idea of which ones they are. But just in case, just make sure that you do not just run up to the next platform. Otherwise, you're likely to get hit, sometimes get knocked off the edge. Now here's a mini-boss. This game is actually littered with mini-bosses. What you have to do is you hit him, and he immediately goes to the other side of the screen. If you don't get over there in time, I'm not sure if he disappears or not, but if you can see, you can just do what I'm doing. Just kind of jump from almost the middle portion of the screen and attack, and you'll hit him. That's the fastest way to attack him. And I just stupidly got hit right there. If you do really well in this game and you don't get hit, you'll eventually get a third power-up for your whip. Just like in traditional Castlevania fashion, it takes 2 power-ups from random candles to power up your whip or your main weapon all the way. It's just obviously the spear for the other character. And your whip is a little bit longer, it's a little more powerful. But in this version, you can actually power it up a 4th time. Now, I'm not sure what the requirements are for that, but when you get it, I'm pretty sure one of the requirements actually is not getting hit for a certain period of time, maybe hitting a certain amount of candles while not getting hit. Or maybe you can still get hit, but I don't think I've ever done it without getting hit. Needless to say, once it finally happens, your whip turns into sort of a blue flame whip, and it's pretty useful. Unfortunately, it comes out slower than your regular whip, so for someone that is not very experienced with this game, it's probably actually more efficient to just stick with your regular whip, because it just comes out faster, and it's easier to attack with. But if you can get good with attacking with the blue flame whip, it's worth it, because it also dishes out a lot more damage. And not only does it change your whip, though, it also changes your special item, or your special attack, which right now I have I guess you can call it a boomerang. And it used to be the cross in the old versions, but in this version, it's the boomerang. And for instance, with Jonathan Morris, when you get the flame whip, your special item changes to this sort of homing blue attack, and it's very powerful. It uses up a lot of your blue orbs, though, which I haven't even talked about yet, those blue orbs. But it uses up a lot of those blue orbs, but it's very powerful, and it basically homes in on any enemy on the screen. Very good for certain bosses in certain sections, especially actually this section in this game. And there are a couple tricky portions right here where you're on a higher platform and enemies are on a lower platform, and it's kind of hard to jump down, or jump down without getting hit and getting knocked off the edge. But having the blue flame makes it a little bit easier. And I believe I do so right up here, or shortly, not this part. Those guys with the mallets, you can kill them in one hit. Just what I usually do is, well, you can just see what I'm doing right there. I usually jump and kind of like swipe them with the whip as I'm going down. It seems to hit them better. And depending on how you hit them, they do block, though, and it'll take extra hits to hit them. And we're getting really close to the boss. This next room after this is the boss, and it's a pretty cool boss. And these little Minotaur guys in the bottom, I believe they're sort of Minotaur guys, I let them all run to one side of the screen, and then I go and just attack them like so. No sense in running down there or jumping down there while they're all on different sides of the screen, and they're all running back and forth at you, so. Now this boss right here, it's pretty self-explanatory. All you have to do is destroy the sort of pillars that are going up him, and you need to get him in reach of your whip, because when he starts off, he's really tall, he's really high up there, and you can't reach him unless maybe you have the axe. So what you want to do is destroy each sort of section of his pillar to bring him down lower. It's not necessary to destroy all the pillar pieces, but you need to get him low enough so you can actually hit his face. He's not a very difficult boss at all, actually, and that's the case for a lot of the bosses in this game. Most of the bosses are not difficult. Even Dracula isn't very difficult once you figure out his pattern. Dracula is a case of having to figure out the pattern, and it's probably the most tricky boss in that case. But for the most part, the bosses in this game are not very difficult, and if anything gives you trouble, it might be the stages. Some of the areas in the stages can be a little tricky, but overall, they're not too bad either. And to be honest with you, this is actually probably one of the easiest Castlevania games, because even on expert mode, the hardest mode in the game, I believe it, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the hardest mode. I don't think there's anything higher than that. It's still not that difficult as long as you take your time, you play smart, you don't just rush into things. Like those guys, when they pick up those pillars or parts of the pillars, you don't want to just run in to them. But if you do see them like that, you know, try to kill them as quickly as you can if you have the chance. But if they grab the pillar, it's not recommended that you just run straight in. Because you have to get close to attack them. And if they haven't attacked yet, don't attack, because they're going to attack you back right after you hit them once. So. Now what I do here, I believe, is I basically bolt straight through the stairs, and there's an invincibility power-up right there to the right. And on expert mode, it's really essential that you do that because it's a lot more difficult to get through this part on expert mode. But right now on normal mode, it's not too bad. You can get through it without the power-up, but I do recommend the power-up just to make it a little bit easier on expert mode. Now there's the good old axe. It's a great weapon in this game. It's huge, much like the one in Symphony of the Night, but I think this one's actually even larger. And a very cool weapon. In this game, you actually have 2 abilities for each weapon or sub-weapon that you have, whereas in past Castlevania games, you have you just have your sub-weapon and that's it. But in this game, if you hold up and press your sub-weapon button, it'll actually do an alternate version of it. So I believe you actually just press C to use your sub-weapon. So if you just press C while you have the axe, you just toss up the traditional axe, which is large, powerful, and it has a pretty good reach in this game. If you hold up in your special weapon button, 3 little mini axes will come up and spin really fast and then bolt across the screen. Now one thing you can do with that weapon or that secondary weapon is actually use it close to an enemy, so it actually, all 3 of those little mini axes come out and they sit on the enemy, and it'll do the most damage that way. And for non-boss characters, it'll basically diminish their life the fastest. On this little area right here, you don't want to just walk off the platforms. Castlevania, if you walk off platforms, you go straight to the ground. So if you just happen to walk off a platform, you're dead. But one thing I did want to note on this area is you want to go up the right-hand side of the screen. Not right here, but I believe it's this next part up here. And there's an extra life coming up right there. Just got it. When you get extra lives in this game, there's a nifty little chime, sort of, that sounds whenever you get it. So, and just like other parts in this game where it kind of forces you up, just take your time on that part. Don't be jumping back and forth, otherwise you're likely to get hit by a Medusa head, the infamous enemy in this in the Castlevania series that never seems to go away. I don't mind it so much because I've been playing this series for so long, but some people absolutely hate the Medusa characters in the Castlevania series, and I can understand why. But once you get the pattern down, they're not too bad. Especially in this game, they're not nearly as annoying in Bloodlines as they are in other Castlevania games, like, well, I don't know, Castlevania Part 1 or Castlevania 3. So this part's not too bad either. These sort of skull bone dragons come out, and having the boomerang is actually the best weapon for this part right here. If you have the axe, or if you have, dare I say, the holy water or something like that, it's really tough to hit them with your special weapon. And it's tough to hit them with your whip because your whip doesn't go that far across the screen. But as long as you have the boomerang, it's not too bad, and they give you the boomerang not too far before this portion of the stage. So you should have this weapon when you get here, and it's if you get it, I recommend picking it up if you have a different weapon. One of the cool things about it, though, is that each one of these guys, when you attack them, they drop something. Usually it's a 1-point gem, or a gem that raises your meter by 1. And each boomerang you use only uses 1 of your gems. And so you can just use your boomerang freely here, and you should get most of your gems back. So it's not like it's a big waste. And again, just make sure you're careful here. Don't just accidentally walk off the platform. You'll go straight down, and there's no way to recover that. And you notice I just picked up the axe here as well, and it's actually a pretty useful weapon on this boss. This guy stays up in the sky for about the first half of the battle. His whip, or his tail, comes down like a whip, just like that, and then his tail's gonna do a 3-way shot right here. So you want to just avoid those. Usually you can just stay in one spot and jump. He's not very difficult. You just have to be sort of patient and play smart. The hardest part is that the tower that you're on is constantly rotating, so that's also messing up your positioning on this stage, or this boss. Now right here, he's just going to stomp on the ground over and over, so again, just keep moving, keep positioning yourself. Be careful, because again, the tower is constantly moving. It might seem difficult if you've never done it before, but in reality, it's really not. You just got to pay attention. Really cool effect on this though. There's all those clouds scrolling in the background. The foreground clouds are going one way, the background clouds are going another way, and the tower is spinning. It's very cool. This was one of the more impressive Sega Genesis games in my opinion. It's kind of like Contra Hardcore. There's just lots of really cool graphical effects in this game that you don't see in a ton of other Sega Genesis games. Some of the colors, they look kind of dark, which is basically par for the course in the Sega Genesis because of its really low color palette. I believe 64 colors on screen at once or something like that. However, the game still manages to stand out visually in even just the most basic senses, like even just this part right here looks decent for what it is. You know, you can see the green and so forth. There's lots of variety in the graphics or the visuals in this game and the overall graphic design, especially once you get to like the next stage 5, which I believe you're in France or something like that. There's lots of different types of places you go to in that stage, and it's very cool. So before I actually get to this next part I want to talk about, I totally forgot to mention that for those of you not too familiar with the Castlevania series, your secondary weapons actually use these gems that you pick up. So every time I push C to use my boomerang, I'm using one of my gems, and that's what all those candles are for. So that's why you see me whipping candles, gathering gems, things like that. It's to boost my weapon using ability, essentially. Now that little area back there is also kind of tricky to get to, so if you get here on your own, just try to do what I did. If you're using Jonathan Morris, the whip-wielding character. And there's some meat in here as well. But this next part that's going to be coming up is where I die trying to get this extra life. And, oops. You can actually be slick and pass that guy without getting hit by him. That's what I was trying to do. And it didn't work out too well. But, these skulls that you have to, hit are very, I don't even know why I'm saying very, but just be careful because when you hit them, their heads drop into the ground and they come right back up. So what I do is I hit them once and then I just wait for them to spawn back up and then I kill them again before, going through. So that's the extra life, and what you have to do is you have to whip your way back up, but my whip misses right there for some reason. I guess it was too far on the platform and the game just doesn't register it that far. And I died a really stupid death. I think I would have actually made it had it not been for that. I think I would have made it if that hit detection on that platform was a little bit better. So now my whip is shorter and it's actually a little more difficult to get up to this secret area. One of the cool things is that all the jewels and hearts and everything, I think even the extra lives are still up there. So that's one thing to note in this game, is that any extra lives that are in candles, I believe, stay even after you die. So what I'm trying to do is get my ass back up there. Having a hard time doing it, actually. And there we go. It's pretty tricky, but it feels good. There you go, another extra life. It feels good when you manage to do it, because it's not something that's completely easy when you have the shorter whip. So in case you're curious, the meat does not respawn as far as I know. Yep, it's completely gone still. Alright, now this next part up here, you just kind of dodge these pistons. It's nothing too difficult. Again, you don't want to be too stupid though, because if you just kind of sit there, they will crush you. So just wait for them to move and then jump quickly. Don't take your sweet time, because again, if you don't get out in time, you get crushed, which is no good. So Now, dropping down there was actually the first time I've ever done that in all my years of playing this game. I never bothered to. I figured there was nothing there, so I decided to take the chance and jump down and see if maybe there was some meat or an extra life or something in the walls. Because, as you know, in Castlevania, you can bust down the walls, usually find some hidden items. But no, it's not there. And really what it is used for is it's kind of a shortcut for if you're using Eric, because he can just kind of pogo his way up. Which I actually do in my second run on expert mode as I'm playing, but I make a couple mistakes there, and as I'm pogoing up or super jumping up, whatever you want to call it, I end up getting hit by the skeletons. His super jump can destroy candles as he's going up, but apparently they don't destroy enemies, or they don't destroy enemies without the enemy hitting you first. So, but if you decide to stick around for the second playthrough in this session, then you'll see what I mean once I get to it. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to comment on my second playthrough. It's getting kind of late at night right now, so haven't decided yet. I guess you'll find out once we get that far. So here's Frankenstein. Again, he's not a very difficult boss. He has a basic pattern. When he busts the ground like that, you want to get on that other platform because you're not going to jump over it. It goes far too long. Just try to judge what he's doing. Sometimes he throws that sort of whip-like thing out just straight, and you can duck it. Sometimes he spins it around and making it a little more difficult to avoid. But if you go and you sit on that platform, you shouldn't get hit unless he's doing the straightforward kind of whip-like shot. Now these things are big-ass blades. You definitely do not want to get hit by them. And there's 3 of them, I believe, and each one takes a different... you got to go at it with a different approach. Like this one, you have to get up, move forward slightly, duck, get up, move forward slightly, duck. You cannot just get up and just run straight through it, so... Trying to be safe here, because actually the first playthrough I did in this game, I actually died on that part, which is kind of embarrassing because it's really not that difficult. You just... I guess my hands or my fingers were just slippery, maybe sweaty or something like that, and with the Sega Genesis D-pad, it makes it a little more difficult, but and these guys with these, you know, spinning these spike balls around, I usually just try to take my time with them. No sense in rushing in. I'm more likely to get hit if I just rush in, so I just sit back with the boomerang. And as you can see, the boomerang will actually hit them twice if you time it just right. And it'll take 4 hits with the boomerang to destroy them. Now this guy's probably the most challenging one because of the way that these platforms are going with these gears, and it's a little more challenging. So I end up wasting a lot of my my gems trying to kill that guy, but I decide to just jump straight down and kill him. Now that part on expert mode is actually more difficult because bats are also flying at you while all that's happening, so... Again, if you stick around on expert mode, you'll get to see that, and it is definitely more challenging on that part. There are a lot more bats flying around on expert mode, and I think there's a lot more bats flying around on expert mode, so... Now this boss, he's kind of a quirky boss. He really shows off the capabilities of the Genesis, just with how his arms are just flinging around everywhere, and just that shiny nature to the gears that are on him. It actually really reminds me of some bosses in the Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis. Now, if you haven't played that game, I highly recommend it. It's a very, very cool game. One of my favorite 2D action platformer games on the Genesis, actually. And Batman and Robin is actually more of a side-scrolling run and gun than it is a platformer. It's got some platformy segments here and there, but it's far more of a run and gun than this game is. That's a long play I'll definitely be doing in the future. Batman and Robin, it's a game I can beat without too much trouble. So definitely watch out for that one down the road. Not sure when that's going to be, but it will be in the future. Alright, so now we're in France, and this is exactly what I was talking about. Another cool stage. I really like all the stages in this game. I really don't have a least favorite in terms of levels in this game. Each one has its own unique features. For instance, this stage, you got these big flowers in the sky. If you touch their pollen, or whatever you want to call it, they'll actually reverse your controls, so it's good to not get hit unless you're good with being disoriented like that. I personally don't have too much a problem if I get hit, because I'm used to games kind of screwing with my mind like that, reversing controls. So instead of moving right to move right, I'll move left to move right until it wears off, so it's not that difficult to get around. I don't believe the pollen actually hurts you, it just gives you that trait of reverse controls. So, kind of quickly referring back to something I mentioned earlier about point racking, this is actually the point in the game where you can, well, point rack. These red skeletons they endlessly pop up, and there's several of them. You can actually kind of get them cornered over here and just constantly attack them. And if you want to earn up some extra lives, this is the place to do it. Now, I don't believe I do it in this playthrough, no. But I have done it in the past. And for the newbie player, I especially recommend it on this stage because this is probably, in my opinion, the most challenging stage in the game. There's a couple parts that are just pretty tricky, and they're actually coming up right after this section right here. These guys, be careful, they wind up and then they swing. The first one is pretty easy to attack because he doesn't swing out that far, but the other guys swing out very far and very quick, so just try to gauge where they're going and then just use your whip to attack them if you don't want to use any special items. Now here the good old axe armor enemies. They're basically staples of Castlevania characters, and they're not very difficult to destroy. And what I recommend is when you attack them, actually hold out your whip just a moment longer, because you'll actually hit them twice and you'll hear it and you'll feel it. It'll go tink 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 instead of just going tunk tunk tunk. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm holding my whip out for an extra moment each time I attack them, so I can attack them and kill them quicker. Now the biggest problem in this part is this big gold fucker right there, and if I did not have my my special ability, the big blue shot right there, he would be really difficult, and I don't know if I've ever gotten past that guy without getting hit, at least not in recent times. I think I might have when I was younger, but I don't even remember how I did that. And likewise, that massive bone pillar that you saw me just get through is also fairly challenging without having that special attack. Now this section in the game is another one of the many areas where Eric actually has to go through it, and actually one of two areas actually. It's not really many, so to say, but and what you can do in this part is continually whip yourself up or across to get, I'm not sure if there's a secret, but it's always fun to do. So these guys right here, they toss out bombs and so forth. They also toss out skeletons as enemies. They just kind of spawn up. They'll also occasionally drop meat. So what I try to do sometimes if I'm low on health is I just kind of sit around and see if he drops some meat. Unfortunately, that was not the case here, but my life isn't all that low anyways. It's not a huge deal. Aha, there's some meat. And I think I just whip across here again just for shits and grins, just because it's fun. It's something that you can't really do in other Castlevania games. Like Castlevania 4 set the standard to a degree, or introduced abilities kind of like that, where you could whip, or you can whip onto hooks and you can swing across, you know, chasms and things like that. This game doesn't have that, but in its place you can whip on the ceilings and latch onto ceilings, which is very cool. I'm not sure which one I like more, but I'm glad that they sort of included that in this game, because aside from the Turbo Duo Castlevania game, technically this was the next Castlevania game that we got in America for a console. So as a US gamer, this was naturally the next Castlevania game I played after Super Castlevania 4. So it was great that while they modified things a little bit, kind of went back a few steps, they kept a few things and modified them. So those abilities were still sort of in here. So that was really cool that they did that. Now this guy is really easy. Just attack him. He's gonna actually fly to the other side of the screen. That's probably the trickiest part. His fist actually kind of flies out and goes all the way across the screen. You'll see what I mean here, right there. As long as you get in front of him and duck, it's not a big deal at all. Most of the mini bosses in this game are pretty simplistic, not too difficult at all. And like I said earlier on, the bosses in this game aren't too difficult either. Now these guys, again, they take more hits. Just hold your whip out when you attack them, and you'll get some extra hits on them. Now after this guy, there's actually a little dude that comes out sort of on like wheels, and you gotta be careful. I think I might actually get hit by him. Yeah, it was really stupid. I remember that happening and be like, God, Austin, you're an idiot. But just hit him once, he'll bounce back and then bounce forward a little bit, and then you can hit him again. So just time your hits, and he's pretty easy to get by. And that guy with the gun, not too difficult either. This mini boss right here, he shoots these balls out, and then once his pillar reappears, you want to attack his pillar. Obviously, as you can see, you can destroy those blue balls he shoots out. Blue balls. And he's not very difficult as well. Or at least not difficult if you manage to attack the blue balls or spheres or whatever. Now this next part, I believe we go down a bridge, and then we're at the actual boss for this stage, and then after that, we're at the very final level already. And we're actually at the 37-minute mark. You know, it really does not feel like 37 minutes already. It feels like I've only been talking for about 15 minutes. So, this game actually just progresses really quickly, and to be honest with you, it's actually kind of difficult for me to comment on one particular thing at one time, because in literally 15 seconds, you're already at something else that I want to talk about. So my thoughts in this game are kind of going a little all over the place, because that's the nature of it, really. It's like I said, it just progresses very quickly, and it's a fast Castlevania game. It doesn't take very long to get through it, or at least it doesn't feel like it takes long to get through it, because again, the environments in this game are very varied throughout the game, and there's just a lot of different places you go to, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different kinds of enemies and so forth. So there's just so much there. It feels like it goes by quickly, but in reality it still takes a little while. Like, we're basically at the 40-minute mark right now. And by the time I finish the game, it's 50 minutes. And, you know, for an old 16-bit title, like an hour of play, it's still a decent amount of time for a game that old. And that's a good run. I mean, if you're really bad at these kinds of games, it'll probably take you several hours to get through it because of trial and error, continuing, running out of continues, things like that. So, but I guess the point was, it just doesn't feel like it takes 50 minutes. It feels like it goes through faster. There's just so much there, and now this next stage is the last stage, and a couple tricky parts here. These Medusa heads come out and they shoot these sort of fireballs or balls of energy, whatever you want to call them. If you time it right, you can actually jump and hit them and their energy balls at the same time. Of course, I'm not nearly as good as I used to be in this game, so I didn't remember the exact timing for that. Now, this is probably the least favorite part in the game for, not myself, but many others that I've seen review this game. I actually kind of like this part because I can basically just roll right through it. It's disorienting. As you can see, there's just split, the playfield has been split multiple ways, so it's actually difficult to see exactly where you stand. But if you just kind of use your intuition and you pause and you attack the Medusa heads, you got to anticipate the Medusa heads. They come at a pattern. They come out one at a time, one every few seconds. So again, if you need to make a jump, just stop, attack the Medusa head, then jump, and that's the best way to progress. It's actually the best way to progress in basically every Castlevania game that has Medusa heads. So, and I got hit. And it's always a shame to get hit when you have the fire whip, or the flame whip, because it just does so much more damage, and it's very nice to have, especially at boss fights. If you have it at boss fights, the bosses they drop like flies. They drop very quickly. So one thing you'll notice me doing in this game is whenever you see a candle, even if it's close to the ground and I can just reach it without jumping, I still jump and attack it, because what that lets me do is still constantly move as I'm attacking it. Instead of stopping, what I notice people doing is they stop and they attack it, and they stop and they attack, and they stop and they attack it. I like to rush through these games as quickly as I can. I kind of like that feeling of sort of speedrunning it, even though I'm not really speedrunning it. It's kind of like in between playing normally and speedrunning it. I like that sort of middle ground when I'm playing these games. Games like Castlevania, games like Mega Man, I like to do what I can to cut back the amount of time I have to stop for monotonous things like whipping the candles. So in this game, if you jump and attack it, if you time it right, you can basically still hit the candle and keep moving without stopping for a second. So that's how I kind of keep the flow in this game. I'm able to just keep pushing forward, and that's always been a fun aspect in the Castlevania series for me. Especially Castlevania 4, where you could whip in basically any direction. They took that out in this version. You can whip in a few directions in this one, but not all directions. In Castlevania 4, you could basically whip in any direction you wanted. So now, at death, he pulls out these cards, as you've seen already, and 3 of the bosses that you fought before you have to fight again. And then there's 2 cards you get where he shoots fireballs down to the bottom of the screen. You can avoid them with ease. And then 1 card, at least on normal mode, will give you a bunch of meat, which will refill your health. What's best to do is save the meat for last, but I did it basically first by accident here. Almost first, second technically, but now we're at the sort of gargoyle boss on the Tower of Pisa. And these bosses, they drop a lot faster on the second time through, so it's not quite like Mega Man where you've literally got to fight the same boss again and they look the same. These bosses are actually palette swapped now, so they do look a little bit different than they did before, which is always a nice mix-up. It's not the exact same thing again. And again, like I said, they are a lot easier. Well, their patterns are basically the same, but the damage you deal a lot more damage on these guys, which is cool. It doesn't make this whole boss battle thing seem so drawn out, which is cool. Death himself isn't very difficult either. He's more of a challenge on expert mode because he deals a lot more damage. And but on normal mode, he's pretty simple. He goes down pretty quickly. Which again kind of goes back to my saying this is sort of the easiest Castlevania, because Death in other Castlevania games was always seen as one of the most difficult bosses in each Castlevania. But that's not really the case in this one. He's definitely the longest boss battle in this one, but he's far from the hardest, if you ask me. Now, this boss right here is actually, I believe, Elizabeth Bartley or something like that. That's her name, I think. She's actually the chick from the intro in the game. She's trying to resurrect Dracula. Yada, yada, yada. Basic story. She's actually another multifaceted boss fight. And she's got the Medusa form right here. And the Medusa form has 4 different attacks. This one where she's just pushing her way towards you. Every time you attack her, she gets pushed back a little bit. Then she's got this fireball one, which has a pretty basic pattern. What you want to do is you want to jump through the second one. There's a gap large enough for you to be able to jump through. And then she does that sort of flamethrower thing down. If you duck it, you don't get hit. And then her tail slide on the ground. You can just jump it at the right time. So just be watching out for that. This part, you have to hit her before she shoots out her fireball. And every time you hit her, the little sort of things of energy or icons she pulls up there get destroyed. And every time you destroy the entire set of them, life is drained from her, basically. And what I do is I sit in the middle of the screen and I just wait for her to spawn in an area. I try to predict it, and as I see her jumping in, I immediately jump over and attack as I'm jumping. If you sit in the middle of the screen, it's enough distance, or jumping is enough distance to hit her. So what I try to do is I jump in and time it to where my whip is coming down on her right as she comes in, or close to it. It's really not that difficult. Even on expert mode, it's not that difficult. There is a little more pressure on expert mode because when you do get hit, enemies do a lot more damage on expert mode, and enemy attacks sometimes come out a little bit faster. So it's there is a little more pressure on that, but so what I typically do is I just, like I said, sit in the middle of the screen, but I'll literally just focus on the middle of the screen, and then my eyes will be able to tell which direction she's going, just by kind of focusing on the middle of the screen and just paying attention. Paying attention is the biggest thing. If you don't pay attention, it's a lot harder to track that and attack her. So now this next part, we have one more tiny stretch, and then we get to Dracula. And this is some classic Castlevania music. This was originally in Castlevania 4. And definitely one of my favorite Castlevania tunes out there. And I believe it's the theme of Simon or something like that. It's a great track. Fits very well with the rest of the Castlevania universe. One little thing to note here is if you die at Dracula, you start at the bottom of those stairs, but you can actually well, let me go back a step. When you die at Dracula, you go to the bottom of those stairs, and I think I actually do this on expert mode because I die at Dracula once, and you don't get enough power-ups to fully lengthen your whip. So what you can actually do is walk back down the stairs, and all the candles will reappear. One of the cool things about this. So even if you start, if you die at Dracula and you gotta start there, you can just do that to power yourself up a little bit, to make the battle a little bit easier. Some other Castlevania games, you couldn't do that. So it's nice that you can do that in this one. Dracula is not too difficult. What I typically do is just jump and hit him right as his head pops up. And what happens is I hit him, and whatever projectile he shoots at me, I destroy as well. Now, if you just sit on the bottom of the screen or you just jump randomly, good chances are he's going to sort of aim your way and he's going to hit you. So that's something you want to watch out for. His second form also isn't very difficult. These balls he shoots out, they actually track and they go wherever you are on that specific portion of the screen. So if you're jumping up in the air and they cross you, they'll actually cross halfway down the screen instead of all the way at the bottom of the screen, because that's where you were when they decided to track you. Now, this boss actually has 3 forms. This first one, he shoots out these sort of things, and what you do is just kind of, you know, sit back on one side of the screen. If you get too close to him and you stay too close, it's a lot harder to dodge these things. So what I do is I attack him and I walk all the way back. Very simplistic once you figure out the pattern. And this one right here, you just attack him, and kind of like the blue dog cat thing in Woodman stage for Mega Man 2 on the Nintendo, he shoots out this flame, and if you just jump at the right time, you can clear it. And apparently his feet do not hurt you. Now this part, when you attack him, bones fly from the top of his head. They only do that though when you hit him. So what you want to do is just don't attack him when you want to clear him. And then that's it. It's tricky at first trying to figure that out, but once you figure it out, it's actually not that difficult at all. So, with that, guys, that is the end of Castlevania Bloodlines. Seriously, it does not feel like 50 minutes of gameplay. It feels like I almost just started recording this long play. So, yeah. And the endings in this game are actually they're shortened depending on what difficulty you play it on. So you actually did not get the real ending, or the full ending anyways, playing on normal mode, and it'll basically say try expert mode at the end of the credits. So this is the only screen you get right there for the ending, but if you do beat it on expert mode, you get more of an ending, slightly longer. Still nothing too special, but it is a longer ending, trust me. And if you play it with Eric, well, I'm going to play it with Eric, or I already have. I've already recorded the footage. I'm going to go ahead and let this roll out with Eric, and if you decide to watch all the way through, or if you want to just skip to the end of this video, you'll get to see the ending with Eric. You don't even have to sit through the whole video, just skip to the end. But you'll see that the ending is a little bit longer. So in kind of traditional Castlevania fashion, sort of traditional Castlevania fashion. I know Castlevania 4 does this, I'm pretty sure anyways. It basically goes through all the bosses and things like that and gives you their names and all that good stuff. After that, that's basically it. The game ends, you can start a new game, and you'll see me go into the options menu and selecting expert mode and going from there with Eric. So if you guys haven't played this game before, I actually highly recommend checking this out. It's not the cheapest Genesis game there is. You know, cartridge only one might cost you 15 bucks at some game store. A complete copy might cost you between 25 and 35, maybe $40 tops. That's tops. I would say between 25 and 30 is probably what you're going to end up paying for a complete in-box copy with manual and everything. Now, this game was actually re-released by Majesco in the late 90s, and with that, this game was re-released in a cardboard box. Now, that means that the first release of this game actually came in a plastic case, and that's the version that I prefer having. The plastic case looks a lot better than the cheap cardboard boxes, and the material that Majesco used for their cardboard boxes was actually a little bit cheaper than the material Sega used for their own cardboard boxes. Basically before giving Majesco the rights to continue to manufacture Genesis games. Contra Hard Corps was another Konami game that was also re-released in the cardboard box fashion. And it's really awesome that these games were re-released, because if they weren't, I think this game would actually be worth more than it is now. Basically meaning, outside of emulation, and it would be more difficult to obtain a copy. And I like it when great games are affordable, because that means they can kind of live on through the future, and new generations can experience them for the first time. But when games are very collectible, highly collectible, it's a lot more difficult for others to be able to experience those games for the first time through normal means, like popping a cartridge in a Sega Genesis and playing it with the original controller that it was designed for. I have nothing against emulation. I love emulation. I think it's a great way to preserve games. I think it's a great way to try games. As far as actually sitting down and really giving time to games, though, I think there's no other feeling like playing it on a real system, popping that cartridge in, pressing that power button, having the tactile feel of your preferred controller on the system. Mine is the Genesis 6-button pad. The official Sega 6-button pad, not the re-released Majesco one. I really dislike those. They're not as accurate in my opinion. They feel a lot more mushy. But yeah. Anyways, guys, this is Eric Lecarde, I believe. You know, trying to correct myself on that in case I'm wrong. I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct, but I honestly wasn't looking at the character select screen either time I selected characters in this game. So, but whatever, that's besides the point. Basically, like I said, he's got a spear, and what's pretty cool is when you attack, it actually kind of comes out, it splits out a little bit. And just like Jonathan Morris, you can actually hold it out a little bit longer. It'll do an extra hit. So what you want to do is for enemies that actually take more than one hit, you want to hold your spear out whenever you can. You'll destroy the enemies faster. And there you just saw me do the super jump, and very useful in this game. And another ability you saw me do is actually holding out the spear. And when you hold out the spear and then press left and then back to the right, or right and then back to the left depending on which way you're looking, he'll actually fling it around, which is pretty useful for certain enemies in certain situations, depending on when you use it. And one of the great things about him, which I ironically did not figure out until my second playthrough, which is this playthrough, the very first playthrough I did that I told you about earlier, where I just died way too many times. I didn't even know that you could actually just attack diagonally with Eric from the ground. Now, you can't do it when you're jumping. When you jump with Eric, you still can only attack to the left and right, or just straight down. You can't do a diagonal up and forward attack while you're jumping. But from the ground, you can just sit and stand in one spot and attack diagonally in a 45-degree angle, up left or up right. So, very cool and very useful. Definitely get used to doing that with him. Now, his secondary attack, which honestly I just overrode with that boomerang, is actually, I think, a lot better than Jonathan's secondary attack for the flame special ability. It actually shoots out these fireballs in like all different directions, and it's really powerful. It clears the entire screen basically. It's very good. So, if you get his secondary flame weapon, I highly recommend keeping it, because the secondary attack with it is very, very useful in this game, especially later on in the game. So anyways, guys, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I could just comment through this whole video, but it's going to be a lot like the first hour of me commenting, where the game just progresses so quickly, it's just hard for me to focus on one thing. But with that, I hope you enjoyed the first playthrough with Jonathan Morris. If you ever have any other questions about this game, feel free to ask me, leave a comment or something. I can see if I can answer your questions if you have any questions left over. I'm pretty experienced with this game. It's one of those games I bought with my own money back in the mid-90s, I think 1994 or 95 or something like that. Just when I was in middle school, and I got my Genesis not too longer prior to that. So I've played this game quite a bit. Yeah, maybe there's some tricks I missed out that I forgot to do, or if you just have any general questions, just, you know, let me know. Let me see if I can help you out. For you guys that like these sorts of things, these long play videos, I actually have a lot more of these. I have, I think, about 10 long plays right now, between Nintendo games, Super Nintendo games. I even have a 32X game in there. So lots of Castlevania, actually, lots of Mega Man, lots of Ninja Gaiden. So if you like that sort of thing, be sure to subscribe, and just go to my main channel page, and I actually have got everything segmented into playlists, and I've got a long plays playlist as well. And if you like other kinds of gaming related videos, I also have reviews. I have kind of casual reviews as well, and more serious reviews, and other special videos and things like that. So with that, guys, again, I'm Austin. I'm out. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and for those of you guys as well that are already subbed to my channel and follow what I do, thanks again for watching as usual, and I'll be back with some more content sometime soon. So until next time, guys, take care.
You